Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hello everyone and welcome to an extra edition of Road to Cheltenham for this festive period. As you can see, Ruby's in place, I'm in place, still self-isolating. So let's get on with looking at more of the excellent action that we've got over Christmas. Ruby, first off, the 2 mile hurdling division, there is an excellent edition of the Matheson Hurdle coming up.
Yeah, it looks like a belter, Lydia. You have San Roy and Abracadabra reopposing after the Morgiana hurdle. Aspire Tower, who won the WKD hurdle when he beat Abracadabra. We don't know if we'll have the mares, Concertista and Honeysuckle, but you should have Sharjah, Saldier and Petit Mouchoir and Cours Sublime. So it'll be a belting race, but a lot of it revolves around that Morgiana. And tactically, it definitely does. Early in the Morgiana, San Roy and Abracadabra ended up side by side, which kind of made San Roy race a bit keenly. So Mark Walsh would either have to go in front of Abracadabra or behind Abracadabra. And how that come about is whatever Jack Kennedy does, because he obviously rode in the Wicked Hurdle in the north, where Aspire Tower made the running. He then eventually got up sides going to the second last. But will Jack Kennedy feel that Abracadabra just blew up, or that Aspire Tower quickened away from him? And that'll determine what position he takes up. So he might choose to sit off Aspire Tower, or he might remember the north and choose to sit close to Aspire Tower, and that'll then make up Mark Walsh's mind.
Yeah, immediately after Morgiana, you thought that Samoa might be able to turn the form round with Abracadabra. So if you were Mark Walsh, what would you do?
I'd probably go forward on a horse that won a county hurdle, which is 2 miles and 1 on the new course in Cheltenham. I know Leopardstown's more of a stamina course anyway than Punchestown, but I'd be going forward. I think he's definitely a stayer, and we know Abracadabra is not short of gear.
What are you exploiting in Abracadabras there?
Stamina, I think, for all of them. I'd imagine Aspire Tower would be doing the same, but then there's a couple of more in there. Like you throw in the Gallant Petit Mouchoir, and this becomes a very different race. They could take each other on, and then it makes it a real test. It makes it a proper race.
Now, Petit Mouchoir, he is 9 years of age. He still seems to live on his nerves a little bit, beforehand. He's running for a different yard. He's now with Gordon Elliott, having left Henry de Bromhead, and he's running in the first time colours of Noel and Valerie Moran. Is there any chance that his tactics will change, or is it just so ingrained in him that he can't do anything else?
Well, they've tried before. He was dropped in once or twice in the past, and he didn't run near as well as he can run. So I think that's been proven not to work for him. That's not to say Connections won't try it again. New yard, new establishment, new outlook. But no, his best way of running is definitely to jump and gallop. So will Rachel Blackmore then go with him, or does she let Petit Mouchoir go and just sit in behind him? That'll be the interesting part. And you got to throw in Willie's too as well. I mean, both came from behind Petit Mouchoir in the Morgiana. Sharjah, we know, is best ridden from off the pace. When he was ridden sort of handily in last year's Irish Champion Hurdle, he ran disappointingly. When he came from well off the pace in the Champion Hurdle behind Epatante, he arguably ran the best race of his career. So he's definitely a hold-up horse. And then you have Saldier. He sat in the box seat in the Morgiana, quickened up well to go and challenge Classical Dream and Petit Mouchoir, go to the last, and quickened away to beat them. So, look, he is definitely had his injury problems, but he's not a slow horse either, and he's one that will definitely be ridden sort of just behind the pace. So what happens then with San Roy and Abracadabras, time will tell.
Is it likely that we're going to see all three of those from Willie Mullins, Samoa, Sharjah and Saldier?
Yeah, I would have thought so. There's not many other options for them, and Saldier, I suppose, he's sound and well. You got to run him because God knows what he'd be like next week. And Sharjah has shown a likency for the track, having won the race last year. So yeah, I could see all three running, definitely.
And ground-wise, particularly pertaining to Sharjah, any concerns?
No, I think ground in Leopardstown will have a bigger bearing on what happens in the chases. If we don't get the rain in Ireland this week, it could play havoc with what runs our fences.
Let's imagine that Mark Walsh carries out the tactics that you would do in his position, and the other horses are slotting in the way that you've just imagined. How does the closing stages develop in your mind?
Well, you're thinking Aspire Tower is good enough to get you all the way to the last. There's no doubt he is. You might even get by Aspire Tower. So you're not looking at one in front that's going to fall in the hole. So Mark Walsh is on your right, or whoever sits in that box seat. I know that's where I'd like to be. But whoever sits there is in control of everybody else's destiny behind him. And yeah, you switch out off the bend so the others think you're going to him. You delay for a few strides and you make sure you're getting dashed by a tower just going to the last hurdle.
And what does it mean, do you think, potentially this race for the Irish Champion Hurdle, for the Champion Hurdle at Cheltenham?
I think it has a bigger bearing on the Irish Champion Hurdle, and a bit like the long walk on Saturday, you could be looking forward to round 2 or round 3 in their case, but all these horses will line up again in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. As regards the Champion Hurdle, I think one of them has to blow everything else away to give itself a chance of beating Epatante.
Okay, we'll come back to her in a moment. First of all, we need to clear up the Unibet International Hurdle, which was run a couple of Saturdays ago at Cheltenham. It was won by Song for Someone, narrowly repelling Silver Streak. How did you see this race?
I thought the winner was really tough and really game. I thought he quickened up well in Ascot. It was 2 miles and 3, but from the top of the hill, Aidan Coleman had to roust him along early, right before he even began the descent. He had to kick him back into a position away from the second last. He's the first jockey really active. Obviously, Goshen fell in a hole, but it was stamina that won it for Song for Someone. Now, I know plenty will feel Silver Streak was unlucky and eventually got the gap after the bypass the last hurdle. I think he got the gap early enough, if he had as much in the tank as you think, to catch Song for Someone. He's only failed by his stride, so maybe that's been a bit harsh, but we know exactly what Silver Streak is. He's a good horse, he's game, he's tough, he's honest, but he's just shy of grade 1, and that kind of leaves you where Song for Someone is. And I think Song for Someone is a horse that might want a bit further. Aintree looks perfect for him.
Absolutely. His trainer, Tom Simmons, has said that he will get a Champion Hurdle entry. He's only 5. He's won 3 grade 2s. I don't think we know the summit of him just yet. He's a really fluent jumper, so the removal of those hurdles in the International wouldn't have helped him.
No, and he's perfectly entitled to an entry in the Champion Hurdle. If he was mine, he'd probably run in the Champion Hurdle before going to entry, because you should never be afraid of one horse. I mean, God forbid Epatante overjumps the first or kicks it out of the ground or something happens and you're standing at home in your stable. One horse should never be enough to deter you. And it's an ideal time from entry. It's at least 3 weeks, not a bit more beforehand. So, look, you can run second in the Champion Hurdle and go and win an entry. If he was mine, he'd be going there.
Of course, it was the new course at Cheltenham a couple of Saturdays ago. The Champion Hurdle is run on the old course. It puts that much more emphasis on speed. It's a bit tighter. Can you see Song for Someone being caught out in that scenario?
You probably could if you had out and out front runners in the Champion Hurdle. Will Goshen, he has to bounce back. If Aspire Tower has to go and do things right. But if you don't get an out and out front runner where Song for Someone can jump out and build a tempo himself in front, no, he won't. Where he'll get caught out as if something goes really hard and he's tapped for toe early and then gets off the bridle. But who knows what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. But if there wasn't a huge amount of pace, he could make the pace to suit himself, build it to suit himself, and run a huge race.
Let's move on then to the Christmas Hurdle, and that's Epatante's next target following her very smooth victory in the Fighting Fifth. And of course, she won this race last year. She
did, and if anything, all she has done since winning here is improve. Obviously, she came here after winning the Jerry Field, and she then went and won the Champion Hurdle. We haven't, lockdown has stopped us seeing much more of her. But I even thought she'd improved again when she won the Fighting Fifth. Her jumping, which let her down in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, has now become her biggest attribute. She is so slick, in tight or long. She's just so quick through the air. She has pace, she has stamina. She sets, I think, a very high standard. People would probably crib that and say her rating is what it is, but God, I think she's rock solid.
And she's likely to meet the likes of Silver Streak, maybe Ballyandy, the 2nd and 3rd in the International Hurdle, 2nd and 3rd in the Christmas Hurdle last season. It's hard to envisage a threat to her at this stage, at least.
But how do you even go about being a threat to her? If you jump out and go flat out and think I'll outstay her, well, she's loads of stamina. If we go slow, we turn into a sprint. She's possibly a better jumper than you, and she's loads of toe. So you can't even find an angle. She's not really keen, so you can't hack along and try and make her free. I don't even know how you set about trying to beat her. So you just go to the start riding one of the others and think, how do I beat the rest? And leave her out of your mind. Yeah, that's probably what you do.
How did you not put her up at 7-2 with all of this? This is hindsight.
What's part 3 of the show?
Is that you suggesting I should move on?
That's me telling you to move on.
Okay. Well, I'll consider myself told then, shall I? Let's move on to looking back at the weekend. We were anticipating in the last show a really fabulous edition of the Porsche Long Walk Hurdle, and we really did get one, with Paisley Park somehow pulling it out of the fire to beat Time Hill, and Roxana played a really big part as well. It's got you all talking. Gordon McRae says, Richard Johnson will get it right at Cheltenham, for sure. What a great little horse Time Hill is. Just spends 1/100 of a second too much in the air. Very precise, Gordon. But he's not had many races. Come the festival, I reckon he can come out on top. Callan Robinson says, and he appeared to be in quite a hurry here, mate, Paisley got his run chopped off and had to make up 12 lengths in 2 furlongs. Tyne had the run of the race on ground he prefers, and Paisley doesn't. The only way this is being turned around is bar a disaster at Cheltenham. And then Jay Hutchison said, Paisley Park will outstay Time Hill, in my opinion, but you can't rule out Cider Burley either. And Willie could make it very interesting if he sends Benny de Dieu in that race. She is crying out for 3 miles. And with the allowance, I would side with her. Jay, that's 3 horses you're wanting in that race. 3, count them. What do you make of all of those reactions?
Well, I thought the race was brilliant, and I thought the reactions straight after the winning post, the beauty of no crowd, no atmospheres. You could hear the disgust in Richard Johnson as he went by, and then you had Aidan Coleman's interview straight away where he thought he'd gotten out of jail. So both riders think that their horses can improve. I'm sure both connections can. I thought it was a brilliant race to watch. I don't know. I don't know where Richard Johnson feels it can improve for him. Maybe if he settles a little better. Maybe if he hadn't made a mistake at the third last or was in front for as long. I'm sure Aidan Coleman is thinking exactly what he said by getting stopped turning in. But I think it makes for a brilliant renewal. Now, they meet again in the Cleve. It's only a grade 2, but the penalty structure is...
Yes, I read that if you read it in a grade 1 or a grade 2, you carry the same penalty. So they're going to be level weights. Level
weights again, and then on it goes. And look, you throw in the other horses, as they mentioned, Cider Burley, Benny de Dieu, I think unlikely. She's more mare's chase, I'd say, or mare's hurdle and running in the stairs. But it's brilliant. And what do you want? You want another clash. And it's going to create debate. Which one do you side with? I was in Time Hill's camp, and I'm going to stick with him. I think he will learn and he will relax better. And as our first viewer said, come down a little bit through the air. Like, Paisley Park is the ultimate stay-in professional. He does it perfectly. Races behind the bridle, doesn't waste an ounce of energy anywhere, and gets to the line. But I think Time Hill can learn too.
So you're with Gordon. I'm with Callum, I'm afraid. The way in which Paisley Park was able to pull that out of the bag, I think that's deadly, and hopefully he won't be having to pull it out of the bag come the return at Cheltenham. But like you, I mean, they're starting at Newbury, moving on to Ascot, moving on to Cheltenham.
It's brilliant. And it's a debate all the way, and you can argue for both horses all the way. If they're both running the Cleve, one might skip it and go to the stairs, but you can argue it all the way.
And it's great for racing, isn't it, to actually have these horses racing each other and for us to be able to have this debate about top class horses.
You do, but you need not a novice coming through to take on a champion, and that's what you have. Time Hill was the novice, coming now as an older horse to take on Paisley, and that's what you continuously need, the cycle of horses coming through. Yeah.
And I tend to agree with you and disappoint Jay. I can't really see Benny de Dieu coming for the Stayers hurdle. If she was beaten in the mares last season, I can't see them going against the Geldings in the Stayers.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah. Okay, well, that is the reaction to the long walk hurdle. And obviously we've got the Christmas hurdle with the likes of Cider Burley over the Christmas period in Ireland, and we'll be reflecting on that when you next see us. Let's move on now, shall we, to the 2 mile chases, because we've got 2 key events again over the Christmas period. The first of them at Leopardstown, the Paddys Rewards Club Chase. And just first of all, we've got Shack and Passoir and Minster entered. Can you really see them both running here? Surely, you said before that Willie Mullins is a creature of habit. Surely Min is going to be at home for Christmas as usual.
Possibly, but the other side of that coin is, Lydia, with last season being so curtailed, Min only ran 3 times. The Dublin Racing Festival, John Durkin Dublin Racing Festival, and then Cheltenham. He didn't get to go to Aintree and Punchestown. So he's down 2 runs from last year, and he's not getting any younger. So, yeah, William Mullins could quite possibly run him at Christmas, because they had such a light season last season. Shack and Poursois the same. He only had 2 runs. So I wouldn't put it, I don't think it's impossible. I think there is a chance both could turn up for that reason. And if they turn up, I think it'll be pretty much what you saw at the Dublin Racing Festival. The way they line up, the way the race in shape. Min loves to gallop and go forward, as he did that day. But as fast as Min went last year at the Dublin Racing Festival, Ornua took it off him. And by the time we got to the fourth fence, Ornua was in front. And then the further on they went, Min jumped back by Ornua, and Chacun Poursuit got involved going to the third last, jumped up on the outside of Min, and we had a brilliant race. Now, what's going to be different? Well, the difference is what novices you have from last year. And that's maybe Notebook and Fakir Dudari. And look, they lined up this time last year in the race and post Novices Chase. Notebook got the better of the early exchanges and ended up dictating it to Fakir Dudari. Fakir Dudari got slightly stopped turning in, and Notebook won. We all wanted the rematch. Come the Orchid in Cheltenham, Fakir Dudari finished second. Notebook was out with the washing. But interestingly, both took a lead in Nace this year in the Popular Square Chase. Cashback and Jingle booked out, and both Notebook and Fakir Dudari were happy enough to sit in. So, come Leopardstown on the 27th, I think they'll be following Min and Chacun Poursuit if they both line up. But I think it could be a really interesting contest.
Okay. Envisage what's going to happen for me from the home turn, if you wouldn't mind.
I know I said last week before that Chacun had to improve considerably on what we saw in Cork, and looking at some of other Willie's horses pulling out in their second runs, I think the improvement could be there. But when I watched back that last night, like Ornua definitely hassled Min for a lot of the race, the early exchanges in last year's race, and I wouldn't be surprised if Min was going to go a bit closer to him.
Interesting. And the younger pretenders, you think they're up against it because these are two very, very good holders of the sort of titles in this arena?
I do. I think they're two pretty decent horses, and yeah, I think they are up against it a little bit. Okay. I think it'll be one or the other. I can't see the novices, last year's novices, being quite good enough.
And the implications for the Dublin Racing Festival, for the Champion Chase and the Ryanair?
I think that if Willie runs them both, they'll both go back to the Dublin Racing Festival and then split up come Cheltenham in March. Min obviously going 2.5, Chacun probably going 2. That would be the way I'd see it at the minute. Now, everything changes. And that said, as I said very early in this show, a lot will depend on what Leopardstown do at the track and what rain falls between now and Saturday.
I think there's a good point you make about the truncated season last season and, the aged minutes. I mean, you want to be still going while he's still operating at that level.
Exactly.
So that is the Paddys Rewards Club Chase at Leopardstown. Over here in Britain, we've also got the Grade 2 Desert Orchid Chase, and that features potentially a matchup between Altior, whom Nicky Henderson has confirmed as being on course for this, but also Duke de Genièvre and Put the Kettle On, we hope. At the time of talking about this, it's still not absolutely clear in terms of Irish runners coming over to Britain whether that's going to be okay.
Yeah, look, no one knows, and there is a travel restriction, or 24 or 48-hour travel restriction from the UK back into Ireland. What will happen with that tomorrow, God only knows. But I suppose it revolves around the Slur, Lydia, and Duke de Genièvre booked out and went he went hard. He went a really good gallop. Paddy Cobden let him bowl along. He jumped from fence to fence, but ultimately the hill and Cheltenham caught him out. I mean, at the third last, it doesn't look likely that Put the Kettle On is going to catch him. And even going to the last, you're thinking, will she, won't she? But eventually she does, and she goes and mows him down. Now, Kempton's a completely different ball game, and you can jump and run with no hill to climb like he did. He will make Altior chase him. Now, I think Altior will, and I think Altior will beat him. But I'm just not sure on a very flat track whether she'll be able to catch up.
Okay, so let's start with Duke de Genièvre. You think there was enough there to suggest that he might be able to recapture his old sparkle of form, the kind of thing that allowed him to win an Arkle?
I think, yeah. I'm not sure it was the strongest Arkles. I think he was well placed, and he ran well in this race last year behind Bundoran, but it was a very slowly run race. I think let gallop along. Can I see him beating Altior? No, I can't. And I think he'll suit Altior because he'll be giving Altior a good lead, which Altior will like, and which could help Altior not jump violently to his left.
Okay, let's talk about that before we go back to put the kettle on. Altior has jumped out to his left. He was kind of potentially mimicking Special Tiara a bit, maybe, and that was put forward as an excuse. Next time out, though, at Ascot, which is a course that can induce you to jump even more left if that's the way that you want to go, he was quite markedly going that way. How much of an issue do you think it is coming back 2 years later at the point of his career that he is now?
I think he does it more so when he's in front. And I think with a Duke de Genève going a really good gallop, I think he'd be straight. I don't notice him doing it in Newbury when he's getting the lead. I never noticed it behind him in Cheltenham, jumping across when he was getting the lead. I think when he's in front, he can be a bit lonely, and pick one way or the other to go. But I think if Duke de Genève gallops along, I think it'll suit Altior.
I take your point, but Cheltenham and Newbury are both left-handed. Kempton and Ascot are both right-handed.
Yeah, but he wasn't down the rail. He had space to jump into.
Okay. Let's move on to put the kettle on then within that dynamic of the race that you just described. You basically think she's not quick enough because she's had to sort of hang on in there to get there in the Schlur. I suppose Connections might argue that it was the ground that she wasn't really enjoying it. She does stay further, but she was able to deal with a strong pace in the Arkle, and that was fine. And plus, she is a very neat jumper, and that will help her at Kempton, won't it?
She's all of that, and there's quite possibly not a horse in training that I have gotten more wrong than put the kettle on. So, yeah, and for that very reason, I shouldn't really reserve judgment because I know whatever I say is going to be absolutely wrong. So she is a wonderful filly, but when you watched her in the Schlur, you did just think, God, she could do it going a little bit further so she could travel a little bit better.
Okay, and you wouldn't be inclined to put that down to trying to find some ground that you just didn't like it, because it was unusually sticky and claggy at that meeting in November.
It was, but it was her first run of the season. She should have been fresh and enthusiastic over the first couple, and she couldn't even keep up then. Yeah, if she struggled in the middle part of the race, but even over the early fences, Duke de Genève was going as fast as Put the Kettle on wanted to be going.
This race could have a massive impact on things, couldn't it?
Yes, it could. And what Altior does more so than what anything else does.
And also, to some degree, Put the Kettle on it. Might it send her towards the Mare's Chase rather than towards the Queen Mother Champion Chase?
Yeah, it could. It really could. It'd be interesting. But as you said, she has to get there. She'd be some addition to the race in Leopardstown. But yeah, it is one of those races that I think she could end up in the Mare's Chase. To me, watching her the last day, I said it for the third time in this segment, I think she wants a bit further, and that Mare's Chase is 2.5 miles. And
do you believe Altior's still got it?
Until he shows me he hasn't, I'll side with him.
Okay. Right, so that is the 2 mile division, and they are 2 absolute belters for different reasons, and I think we should learn plenty during this time. Right, we're going to move on now to the viewer's question, and that comes this week from Ian Broderick, who says...
Hi, Lydia and Ruby. Merry Christmas. My question for you today is, in a world of betting exchanges and social media, what responsibility do trainers have to promptly report any serious issues with their horses, acknowledging that horses have niggles all the time, but if something serious is suspected, should there be more openness?
Right, so this is an issue that comes up plenty. We've had problems with it on this side of the Irish Sea. We've had problems in Ireland previously. What's your take? Why don't trainers promptly report issues like this to the public?
Well, it depends on what the issue is, Lydia. If it's a serious issue, then you can report it because you know exactly what is wrong with the horse. If it has passed away, if it has a tendon, or it has an obvious break, that's a serious issue. But because horses can't or never will be able to talk to you and tell you exactly what's wrong with them, diagnosing problems is never that straightforward. And even reading what Chris Richardson said yesterday and listening to Willie Mullins, they're still not sure what exactly is wrong with Fernie Hollow. He's having box rest because there's nothing evident. So how do you report what you don't know? And there's an element of poker in that as well. So you can stand him in for 3 days and hope he comes sound. And then you give it 9 days, then give it 3 weeks. But if it's just 9 days and you're standing in, but you've reported it, but you still want to run at Christmas, now the opposition know you've missed a week. And there's the poker element there as well. Not just the gambling aspect. There's a poker element there for trainers. And that goes to every sport. So if you're playing outside half for your local rugby team and you trot onto the pitch with a bandage on your knee, well, the open side flanker is going straight for your knee. So the poker is in every sport, and it's in racing as well. So sometimes, when it's a serious injury, yeah, by all means, report it. But when you don't know, why do you report it?
Well, punters would say, there are market affecting issue that has happened. It gets out anyway, clearly. Ian's point is that, it was somehow known more widely before any official comment is made. So there's a damage to racing, the probity, the transparency. It goes down to trust, really, of racing in the meantime. So why wouldn't you report, I've had a setback here. I don't know what it is. Here's a watching brief. Does that really make an impact in terms of, your opposition?
Would have for me when I was riding anyway.
What would you do about it, though?
Oh, if I thought I'd missed a week, I'd make sure we were going to go gallop and you were testing its stamina, testing its fitness. I most certainly would have. Same way when I rode against jockeys, I knew they're coming back from injuries. If I'd known you broke your right collarbone, well, I got right beside you, so you couldn't use it in your left. You had to use it in your right. And that's the poker. People straight away think, oh, the corruption, there's something going on here, there's something going on there, which I thoroughly disagree with. And if somebody has tried to make a buck on back of knowledge that they perceive that they have, well, that's not betting. That's stealing. So someone needs to look into that. That's a different ballgame. But to me, there is poker involved. And the closer you keep your cards to your chest, the better off you can be at times. Okay,
so what you've just said has made me consider it more from a participant's point of view than I had previously, certainly from a jockey's point of view. But more overarchingly, I think I definitely do still stand by my view that the racing industry collectively needs to agree to take this more seriously for the good of its own ongoing reputation, really. And because I think that some trainers have, more often than not, proved that it can be done. Okay, we're going to move on. But Ian, I hope you think that we've tackled your question. So the Novice Chasers, and there are some excellent mashups over Christmas, both at Kempton and at Leopardstown and Limerick, probably elsewhere as well. But we're focusing on those three courses and what they've got to show us. The Quarto Star Novices Chase, Ruby. Let's start with Shan Blue of the Skeltons. Now, this is a horse that has already got some strong adherence among the number crunchers out there.
Mashups. That's an English one anyway, Lydia. It's a new one on me. But Shan Blue, yeah, look, he's won Wetherby twice. Looks a straightforward horse. Ridden just slightly off the pace, doesn't have to make it, jumps really well, no doubt about his stamina. And if the figures are adding up for him, I can't really get a grip on the form he has, but if the figures are good, so be it.
I thought you would have liked the way he propels himself through the air. He's really quite forward.
He is a good jumper, but he's not keen. He's an easy, looks an easy ride for Dan Skelton, Harry Skelton even. Sure, Dan would enjoy riding him too, but he is. He looks dead straightforward.
I'm not sure Dan would enjoy riding him too.
No, he might have at some stage.
Right, okay, the big breakaway. This is your absolute favourite. It's just a case of whether the Tizzards listen to you and put those cheek pieces on.
Oh, I don't know if they will or not. But look,
they won't.
We watched them in Cheltenham, having a good look running down the hill to the first fence away from the stands. But then he did jump well enough in Cheltenham. He was brilliant at the third last and very good at the second last and last. But he went to Exeter then back in trip and had a good look at the water, jump away from the stands and got robbed. I mean, Sean Bourne was brilliant, but he didn't show any propulsion through the air. He was very deliberate and very idle. So the race will suit, but a triple suit. But Shan Blue's not going to suit him because Harry Skelton most certainly isn't going to go and give Robert Power a lead. So what way the race unfolds is going to be very important for the big breakaway.
Okay, I've said that obviously they won't put cheapies on. I say that from the point of view that it's still pretty early in his chasing career. That said, Kempton, he's going to need to hold his position. And they've seen with the likes of Native River, their own horse before, that has been a disadvantage. The Big Breakaway and Shan Blue met each other in the Ballymore of last season as well. The Big Breakaway somehow managed to finish fourth after never travelling at all in the early stages. I mean, Zowie. And Shan Blue probably just got outpaced. He was just beginning to find himself up against it when he got unbalanced on landing 2 out.
He did. And Ballymore can be a funny race, Lydia, in that you perceive you need speed to win the Supreme. Actually, you need speed to win the Ballymore because you have to quicken to win the Ballymore, whereas the Supreme can be more end-to-end. and it catches plenty of horses out, and it caught Chamblou out. It's a really good novice chase. If the three of them turn up, it'll be a good watch. But all three want a trip, so I think that'll suit the big breakaway, because the others don't have real speed to be mugging them.
Yeah, there are potentially other players as well in that Kempton event, but we're moving on to Leopardstown and the Racing Post Novice Chase. And first of all, thinking about the likes of Felix Desgy and Dava Star. Felix Desgy obviously has had his form franked by Sizing Potsy.
He surely has, and the Punchestown race is interesting to watch. And the one thing that will suit Felix Desgy is going back the other direction. If you watch him at the first couple of fences in Punchestown, he jumped quite left, but he has also become a better ride. When he was younger, he was quite headstrong and quite tearaway, whereas now it's not as much. And when Sizing Potsy and Emily Moon jump up by him at the fifth last, he doesn't go here and with them. He just lets it be, and he eventually wears down Sizing Potsy. Now, it didn't look likely from the third last to the second last to the last, but he did wear him down and win well. But going left-handed will be a big help to Felix Desgy. And when you watch that Punchestown race, I don't see how Darver Star beats him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how could you turn it around?
I don't see it. He has some really good hurdle form in Leopardstown. Maybe Leopardstown suits him, but he'll have to bring that to turn the distance around.
And that more tractable Felix Desgy, is that due to having a fence in front of him? Because it's quite marked, the change in demeanour.
Have you not noticed yourself, Lydia, that as you get older, you do get a little bit slower and a bit more relaxed?
Slower, yes. More relaxed, not necessarily. Let's move on to Black Bow.
Yeah, he won well in Navan, jumped well early, jumped quite left at the fifth last, which he hadn't done at any other fence, but jumped really well down the home straight. Couldn't win a maiden hurdle for whatever reason, but did look a natural over fences in Navan, but it was quite an uncompetitive race, and this is a big step up in grade for him.
Yeah, it's just a case of whether fences mean that he's gone to another level. I'm just worried about the level of his ability just based on his form over hurdles.
Yeah, but he was a pretty good bumper horse and seems to have come back to himself. He is a horse that we do think plenty of, and he looks like a galloping 2 mile chaser. He's by Stowaway, and that seems to be their ideal distance.
Okay, then there's Energymine, who we marked out at Gorham Park for that excellent performance comparatively with the other races on the day. He was very good on the clock.
He was, and he was very good through the air. He attacked these fences, jumped from fence to fence, jumped the first and the second, and jumped the last the very same way. It was like he hadn't even been around. It was really good to watch, but I do feel he'll want rain and Leopardstown to turn the taps on. He won't want quick ground up there.
Left-handed?
Can't see it being an issue. I think it's just the way it's unfolded for him. He's had very few runs in his life. I don't think left-handed will be a problem.
I've got to give a shout out to Jonathan Neeson, because when he ran at Lark Hill, he was highlighted by Jonathan for Mark Howard's One Jump Ahead book as a horse to follow in the future. And so he was watching Road to Cheltenham when we were marking
any chance he'd find a few more? Anything news there?
Every chance, I'd say. Every chance.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Limerick, shall we? In the Faheen Novices Chase, and Asterion Falange going the right way round, surely. And he's just a huge talent for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in Punchestown, I thought he jumped perfectly straight, getting the lead over the first couple of fences. It only became apparent later in the race, fourth last, third last, and then at the second last, he was very right. But hey, it's Limerick, he's going right-handed. We saw him in last year's Supreme. It was mark it all the way, but as the race progressed, it got worse. The third last, he took a third of the field with him. At the second last, he took 2/3 of the field and took out Elixir Dane, who brought down Captain Guinness. But going right-handed would really suit him. He's a horse with a big engine who's in really good form.
Absolutely. I mean, I think given everything he did, I know he inconvenienced the others quite a bit, but the fact he was still in front approaching the last, having jumped right so many times around Cheltenham, I thought, wow, that horse has got a lot of ability. Shame that's not his track. How about Janadil?
Won well, Nace on his debut. Thought he jumped economically, maybe a little bit high behind, but I think going faster will suit him up in grade. Again, a bit like Black Bow, it was a pretty uncompetitive race that he won, but Janadil has won. What's his trip? He won a couple of 2 mile handicaps. He ended up running the Albert Bartlett. Things didn't really go right from him. It was a messy enough Albert Bartlett, but 3 miles is probably too far for him. He's in Limerick, 2.5 should suit him. And he's in good order. He's just a hard horse to get a handle on, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think he was unfortunate in the run in the Albert Bartlett, but because it was a steadily run race, I don't think it necessarily exposed any stamina limitations he might have. I think I'm going to learn plenty. I mean, essentially, these races, that's what these races are for, aren't they? You're going to learn.
Oh, sure. Can you imagine? Probably have to talk about it next week, Lydia.
You're going to have to double the length of the show. We're not. Pencil Full of Lead, how about him?
Yeah, it was a real surprise to me. Had a big reputation when he won a bumper in Down Royal, but won in Galway over fences on his debut. But his Punchestown run was really good, and his jumping was super. 4th last, 3rd last, and the 2nd last. And he hockeyed latest exhibition. It was a really good performance. Trips should suit him. Ground seems to suit him. So he's a big player.
I can tell you like him. You've mentioned him a few times now.
I'm a huge latest exhibition fan, so I think anything that took him down has to be a good horse.
Okay, so we could see latest exhibition in the Neville Hotel's Novice Chase. That means he'd be up against, again, Monkfish.
Possibly. Willie Mullins doesn't have a great reputation for running horses in this race. 3 miles, Back in Focus won it, maybe Rathfinden, but I'd say he could count the runners he's had in it. 3 miles at Christmas. Monkfish is in.
Sorry to interrupt, Ruby, but why is that?
Just, I don't know, thinks 3 miles at Leopardstown can just be a fraction far for novices at this time of the year. So he hasn't ran that many in it himself. But Monkfish, I thought he was brilliant on his debut. I thought he jumped the first well, made a small mistake at the ditch past the stands. I don't think it was. Paul Townend referenced it as a mistake and someone picked up on it. I thought the horse danced in front of it and was super. And I think he's a very good horse. We know what he did last year, and he could clash with latest exhibition. Now, we saw latest exhibition running there with Pencil Full of Lead, but I think the better clash for both of them is last year's Albert Bartlett, when they range up going to the last hurdle, Time Hill between them, Fury Road coming on their inside, and it looked like latest exhibition would win jumping the last, but Monkfish battles back to beat him. And yeah, it would be a super clash if it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think the left-handedness is going to be a help for latest exhibition. That's my pet hypothesis on him.
Yeah, you pointed that out in Punchestown, which I hadn't noticed, but I did see it afterwards.
Yeah, so it might be a help for him. Right, there are 2 other novices that we may and may not see over the winter period. Envoy Allen, at the moment, we're thinking we're in the may not category.
We're in the may not category, as Gordon has kind of thought he would go to. He mentioned the Killiney Novice Chase in Punchestown. Now, he's still left in the Racing Post Novice Chase in Leopardstown. Maybe he will turn up. He's Envoy Allen. Wherever he goes, you're going to watch him. Simple as that.
And a horse is just going to go, no, in the short term.
Well, I think the lack of opportunities right now for novice chasers in Ireland mean you will have to take him on if he runs in Leopardstown.
Lack of opportunities, is there?
And there's for a shorter distance. There's a 2 mile novice chase in Leopardstown, the 2-3 in Limerick. There's a 2 mile then on the 10th of January in Naas. That's it.
Gosh, just the 3 in a fortnight span. I mean, that's,
After having all the beginners chases, all the clashes coming together, I'd say it's good programming, and therefore they have to clash.
What's a trainer got to do? How about Shishkin? Could run in the Wayward Lad, the Altior route.
Yeah, and was brilliant there in his debut. Have I saw another novice in England that would frighten Shishkin? I haven't, Lydia. Have you seen one?
No, not yet. Not convinced that I have just yet, no. It's interesting. Shishkin's going straight there from Kempton, isn't he? Whereas Altior took in the Henry VIII Novices Chase en route to the Wayward Lad. So it's a slightly different way of going. But no, I was very impressed with Shishkin on his debut. I don't feel I learned a lot, though, apart from the fact that he clearly is a very good jumper.
I think that's all we needed to learn.
Yeah. Okay, so the Novice Chases, so much to learn over the whole of this period. I'm looking forward to dissecting those with Ruby in our editions coming up. But finally, we have a bit of social media. And this is from Phil Richards.
Your favourite hobby, social media.
Really not. But, I do like it sometimes. And Phil is quite persistent. So on November the 20th, Phil contacted me to say, "Hi, Lydia. As far as I'm aware, Ruby doesn't use social media," wise man, "at all. So could you ask him if he has any plans to update his autobiography? Thanks in advance." Of course, as I'm a useless PA, I didn't ask you. So then he contacted me again on the 10th of December. "Hi, Lydia. Can you ask Ruby if he has any plans to update his autobiography? Thanks." And then again on the 17th of December, "Hi, Ruby. Hi, Lydia. Can you ask Ruby if he has any plans to update his autobiography? Thanks in advance." Ruby, have you got any plans to update your autobiography?
What's your guess, Lydia?
No, you're not going there at all.
Exactly. So why couldn't you just have answered? You could have guessed and been right.
Because I'm not your PA.
you could have guessed on my behalf. You'd have been fine.
Why though? Why is it? You just
one effort writing the book was ample for me.
Right then. Okay, so that is the end of Road to Cheltenham for this side of Christmas. We will be not back again this week. The next time you will see us is on New Year's Eve. However, there will be a couple of columns, at least one before New Year's Eve and one around the time of New Year's Eve to catch up on. But in the meantime, it's a Merry Christmas from Ruby.
It's not really an album. It's not really a New Year's Eve. It's album photo Eve. Come on.
It absolutely is. So Merry Christmas to you all.
Happy Christmas to everybody as well.
And let's all see you on Album Photo Eve. Bye.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.